All right, so welcome back everyone. I'm Eleonora Forzini. I am a part of the AG-WaMED project, as I just said, and now we are going to the last intervention of our masterclass, which is presented by Melina Tobias, and the title is AG-WaMED Opportunities and Barriers for Non-Conventional Waters at the Mediterranean Scale. So please, Melina, go share your screen and go ahead with the presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleonora. Well, just let me know if you can see the screen. I will share it right now. Okay.
We can see your screen. I can.
Yeah, we can. Not yet in the full mood. Yeah. Try to put the full mood, Melina, please. The full screen mood.
Yes, it's in full screen. You cannot see it?
No, we see the preview in the left side of the screen. But I think it's not a huge problem. Let's see if you can manage
No. Let me... One second. I will stop sharing and I will try to share it in another way. I think that the other times happens the same. Let me see. Okay. Now you can see it.
Yeah, again, not in full mood in the sense that we see the preview, but I think it's enough large and we can move like this. Do you manage to move the slides in this way?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand why you cannot see the full screen. Sorry. Yeah. I think I can move it. Yes, of course. Let me.
Yeah. Okay.
You can, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The slide move.
Yes. So sorry. Well, I start in this way in order not to delay a bit the presentation. And if you have some problems, you let me know. Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, the title of this presentation, as you said, Eleonora, thank you for the introduction, is Opportunities and Barriers for Non-Conventional Waters at the Mediterranean Scale. And the idea with this presentation, a bit different from the ones that precede me, this is just a part of the AG-WaMED project. It's not the whole project. It's just the results and the preliminary results of one component of the project. That's the working package 4. And the idea was to present some results of what we are studying right now related to opportunities or drivers and barriers or obstacles for non-conventional waters methods at the Mediterranean scale and also at the national scale. I will explain it a bit more later. So the purpose of this presentation is to identify and describe the opportunities and obstacles for implementing non-conventional water technologies in the Mediterranean countries, especially the ones that are part of the project. As was mentioned at the beginning of this session, the countries that AG-WaMED is working on is Spain, Italy, Egypt, Tunisia, and Algeria. Let me put them. Okay, perfect. So the idea is to work with this to show you the results at the national level and trying to understand a bit which are the main opportunities and obstacles of these countries in terms of promoting different technologies of non-conventional water. This is part of the working package 4, which title is Governance Analysis, Policy Creation and Upscaling. And particularly, I'm presenting 2 deliverables, the 4.2 that's related to the national policy document, and the 4.3.1 that's related to the policy document for upscaling at the non-conventional waters at the Mediterranean scale. So the idea is to show you some results for each country, and then try to make some reflections at another scale, at the Mediterranean scale. In order to achieve this, the study analyzes key drivers and barriers previously defined from literature review. I will explain a bit more the methodology right now at the national level, and then through a comparative and Mediterranean approach. So how is that we get to define drivers and barriers? And this started well, with Chloe Nicolás Artero, another geographer that was part of the project, that she worked in defining which is understood as by the term of water transition, right? So she started making a literature review from that work of literature review, trying to understand which are the definitions in the literature about water transitions. They identified 52 documents in journals that were related to water transitions from the period 2014 and 2024. And they used the WASP and Scopus social science in order to define which is the limits of this literature review in terms of time and also in terms of disciplines, right? And with that research, they identify some drivers and barriers to water transition. And after this theoretical approach to drivers and barriers, what we have done is try to operationalize those theoretical concepts and made some guidelines to try to identify different drivers and different barriers in each one of the countries that we are working on. They are not the scale is not the country, it's the living lab that we are working on in terms of understanding the river basin and all the problematic of non-conventional water in different scales. So we made a guideline with different questions that try to cover the different drivers that I will present in a bit, and also the barriers that each living lab can identify at the national scale. So just to present for the people that are not part of the project and perhaps didn't hear about it, we identified 8 drivers and 8 barriers for non-conventional water use. I will define the drivers because after this I will present the results for each country. So it's important to understand which are the definition of this concept. So there are 2 drivers that promote or that permit the development of non-conventional water techniques. Some of them I won't present it all, but some of them I will mention are, for example, shared vision driver, and that means the existence of a common vision that shifts collective perception towards a new regime or widespread adoption of innovation, or, for example, the cognitive driver or the institutional driver. That means different for example, the cognitive driver means like the creation and assimilation of knowledge to enhance policy orientation, the presence of professional knowledge to support innovation, individual and social learning to change practice. While institutional drivers is more related to the existence of formal or informal institutions to drive experimentation, a coherent and flexible framework, and multiple institution mechanisms to facilitate regime change and support in this transition. So we were trying, and then you have individual drivers, and we also have network drivers in terms of in which sense different stakeholders and institutions are connected each other in terms to promote a non-conventional water uses, and also you have a political driver that means to support from state actors and coherence of political policy instruments to support the transition. So there are different like indicators or variables that permitted us to understand if the country moves towards non-conventional water uses or techniques, or in the other way, we also identify 8 barriers. So we also ask in these guidelines that we share with the living lab, we also wanted to understand which are the obstacles that the countries face towards promoting and or developing non-conventional water techniques in their country. So in the barriers side, we also have a political barrier in terms of lack of clear. If when we were talking about drivers, we were talking the political driver, we were talking about policies that promote this kind of uses in water. When we are talking about the political barrier, we are trying to understand the lack of clear political support for local initiatives, the absence of participation and consideration of local needs, and international orientation by funders towards policies and projects unsuitable for southern regions. So we identify different barriers. I mentioned some of them. The intersectoral barrier means the lack of relationship between actors at different levels or scales. The political barrier that I just mentioned, the institutional barrier that means the institutional fragmentation and internal coordination problems that perhaps represent some obstacle in order to define a more integral policy on non-conventional water use. Also, economic aspects in terms of understanding the lack of visualization of the benefits and the economic viability of this innovation techniques. Also, we identify normative barriers, understanding all the regulatory frame that some countries have, and perhaps difficult the implementation of policies intended to promote a non-conventional water usage. So I won't take much time of this presentation in defining all these variables or these dimensions that we try to follow, but the idea is that our methodology was defining these 8 drivers and barriers that were defined before us in the literature review, and try to see in which way they are expressing in the different living labs. So what I will do in the time that I have for this presentation is to explain a bit which are the results at the national scale, and then try to make some reflections at the Mediterranean level. So we will start with the case of Italy. I won't read all the drivers and the barriers that we identified in this particular country, but I will share some insights that we saw. For example, when we were talking about which are the drivers that promote or that can develop a more non-conventional water techniques in this country, we identify the shared vision that we mentioned before. I mean that most stakeholders recognize in Italy the need for, in this case, reservoirs. That's the way that non-conventional water expressed in Italy due to climate change impacts, but there are no recent large-scale mobilization. So we see a part of the driver, but we also see in that driver some obstacles that don't permit the promotion or the full development of the non-conventional water technique. We also identify in the driver's side in Italy the institutional driver in terms of some regional and national programs such as Piano Invasi that offer a foundation for policy improvements in water infrastructure. If expanded, these programs could provide stronger institutional support. So in this sense, what we try to do is see which are the elements, institutional elements, political elements, network elements that can be strengths in terms to promote the reservoirs in this case. So we identify different types of drivers. In the case of Italy, the ones that were most remarkable was the institutional one, the network, because the Farmers Association and Reclamation Consortia play a key role in lobbying for more flexible regulation and increasing funding in the case of the reservoirs in Italy. So strengthening this network could accelerate policy change. So we can see there in the way that the networks are created in Italy, that we can see something that could be more could be developed or could be incentivized to promote more reservoirs, right? And also the political driver, in terms of there are some national policies and regional management plans, but still they are complex and not fully aligned with local needs. So we see that we can find some drivers, but they also express some kind of obstacles. In the side of the barriers, in the case of Italy, what we saw and what we see is that one of the main barrier or obstacles that the leading labs, or the representatives of the leading labs that were the ones to respond this guideline, and the ones that were the main sources in which we were based to create this reflection for each leading lab or for each country, mentioned the economic barrier in terms of the high cost of new reservoirs, discourage investment, particularly among small farmers. Also the normative barrier in terms of strict environmental laws that complicates reservoirs approval and sediment management. They also mentioned the normative one in terms of, the technical barrier in terms of public irrigation infrastructure that is limited and individual farmers bear the burden of installation. So they're talking about the fragmentation and the isolation of the farmers in terms of promoting new reservoirs. In the case of Spain, I will try to make a quickly overview of the drivers and barriers of all countries, but what I want to have time to develop is the Mediterranean comparison. Yes, so we can go into this after. In the case of Spain, where the non-conventional water uses are especially the desalination, as it was mentioned at the beginning of this session, we can identify different kinds of drivers as Italy. We can identify, for example, the cognitive driver in terms of knowledge-driven approach, integrating research, stakeholders' participation, and adaptive policies. Strong training efforts in precision irrigation and desalination techniques. So the cognitive drivers is strengthened in the case of Spain, for example, that it was in the case of Italy. So this kind of matrix that we built with the drivers and the barriers for each country or for each living lab permitted us to make comparisons and to contrast the situations and the obstacles and drivers of each country. Another driver in the case of Spain was the networks, in terms of strong networks involved technology providers, irrigation communities, and policymakers. This facilitates knowledge sharing, financial support, and infrastructure development. In the case of the barriers that we identify in Spain, we can mention the political one, in terms of that there exists a political support to this kind of techniques, but implementation is really inconsistent, especially due to the cost-related challenges. So this political barrier is connected to the economical one, in terms of the high desalination costs make it less competitive compared to conventional water resources. And also we can see how the different barriers are connected to each other, because as we saw, the political one is connected to the economical one, and the economical one is also connected to the cognitive one, because farmers are well trained but need better knowledge on long-term effects of desalination. So it's also needed some work in the knowledge about these techniques in order to make different equations in the economic and in the political aspect. In the case of Egypt, for example, where the non-conventional water uses are especially in digs and cisterns, we can see in terms of drivers. I will mention one of them for not taking so much time, but the political driver, for example, in terms of the government secures international funding and implements relevant laws and decrees. So we can see here different organizations at an international level that can fund these kinds of initiatives. And in that terms, we can see that articulation between the national government and the local government with these organizations as a driver for promoting the non-conventional water uses. Also, we can see an important driver in the case of Egypt in the networks, because agricultural cooperatives act as intermediators between Bedouins and government ministries to facilitate implementation. So we can see how different actors or stakeholders are connected into a network in terms to promote or to facilitate the implementation of this kind of uses of water. Also, in this case, it's important shared vision about the non-conventional water uses. A common vision exists, prioritizing increasing cisterns construction to combat the drought and enhance rainwater harvesting. In terms of barriers, we can see that in the case of Egypt, the ones that are the most important ones are the intersectoral, in terms of the limited coordination between government agencies and local uses affect implementation, and also the normative ones, in terms of multiple bureaucratic approvals that are required, delaying implementation of these kinds of techniques. Also, we can mention a cognitive aspect. That means the knowledge gaps exist, particularly in the maintenance and optimization of these non-conventional water technologies. In the case of Algeria, we can see that in each country the drivers change, right? In this case, the one that was really important and was really remarkable was the cognitive one, in terms of there's a knowledge creation supported through case studies and research projects, but the policy integration and professional learning efforts remain limited. So we can see a driver in the knowledge and all the research projects that involve non-conventional water uses, but still it's missing a policy integration and professional learning of all these experiences. Also, we can see a driver in the institutional aspects, in terms that the geographic basin agency that has the country plays a role in facilitating innovation, but there are no widespread institutional mechanisms supporting the NCW adoption. In the case of barriers, we can mention one of them, that's the technical one, for example. That means that the infrastructure in this country is inadequate for artificial recharge models. So the maintenance and data collection challenges persist. So what we have done is try to taking into account the voices and the suggestions of representatives of the living labs, experts that really know the river basins and the national policy, try to identify which is the situation of each country in terms of drivers and obstacles for non-conventional water in each one of the countries that took place in the lab. In the case of Tunisia, we can see, for example, as a driver, the institutional aspects in terms of the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment that facilitate the innovation and development in water management, and the Hydrographic Basin Agency that plays a key role in technical and financial support. So we can see a difference with other countries that we mentioned before, that in this case, the institutional aspect or the institutions of water in this country, not only water, but also agriculture and environmental issues, are really key actors in terms of promoting this kind of way of managing water. And also we can mention here the economic aspect as one driver in terms of public funding that covers a significant portion of non-conventional water infrastructure costs. But however, financial incentives for large scale private or community investment remain limited. But we can see a public funding that's something particular of this country, right? In terms of the barriers, we can see again the political aspects as what barrier that is common into different countries, but means in this case that political strategies often fail to consider local participation and small-scale infrastructure needs. And also in this case, we can mention as a barrier the behavioral one. That means the trust in treated wastewater is low, requiring long-term awareness campaigns. So for us, it was interesting to try to identify which are the particularities of each country in terms of drivers and obstacles, in terms to not only compare the situation, but also think which can be future politics in order to promote non-conventional water use. So which are the common barriers for non-conventional water at the Mediterranean level? Well, in this moment of the presentation, I will make a comparison between the different cases. And as common barriers, we identify regulatory and policy gaps in terms of lack of clear legal frameworks and enforcement mechanisms for non-conventional water use, institutional fragmentation in terms of weak coordination among governments, agencies, private sector, and research institutions, limited financial support, insufficient funding, high initial investment costs, and lack of incentives for non-conventional water projects, public perception and acceptance, low awareness and social reluctance due to concerns about water quality and safety, technical and infrastructural limitations, inadequate integration of non-conventional water systems into existing water networks, and data and knowledge gaps, limited access to reliable information, research, and best practice for non-conventional water implementation. Of course, as this is a general presentation, it is a bit abstract, but we can deep or make more details with the questions, or perhaps we can share when we have the documents for each country, where you can see with names and with institution and with laws what we are talking about for each country, right? But this is the common barriers that we identify at the Mediterranean level, comparing the different countries that we analyze. So, which are like identifying these common barriers make us think about the necessary actions to overcome these barriers in the Mediterranean in order to promote and to develop non-conventional water use. So for that, what we think that we need to enforce is the regulatory framework improvement in terms of strengthened policies and legal frameworks to support non-conventional water adoptions, institutional coordination, enhanced collaboration between government agencies, research institutions, and private sectors, financial incentives, promote funding mechanisms, subsidies, and public-private partnerships, public awareness and acceptance, implement educational campaigns and stakeholders engagement initiatives, technological innovation, invest in research and development to optimize non-conventional water solutions, and infrastructure development, improve water management systems, and integrate non-conventional water technologies into existing networks. This is what we discover, or what we analyze in terms of barriers and how to overcome those barriers. Now, the other way of the coin is I'm trying to understand which are the opportunities that we identify that are common for the Mediterranean, right, scale. And there we can identify the political and institutional support in some countries, even if it's not in all. We can see initiatives in different countries, for example, in Spain or in Egypt, when we see national and regional governments actively promoting non-conventional water, desalination, and rainwater harvesting through policies, legal frameworks, and funding mechanisms. So this can be a good starting point for all the countries in the region. Tunisia and Algeria have institutional frameworks that could be leveraged to integrate non-conventional water into national strategies, especially through hydrographic agencies and ministries. Also, a common opportunity that we identified was the existing knowledge and research capacities. So countries like Spain, Italy, and Tunisia have strong research institutions and networks that generate technical knowledge on non-conventional water solutions. On the other side, Egypt and Tunisia have local research centers supporting innovation in water harvesting techniques. Another common opportunity that is worth to mention is establish networks and stakeholder engagement. This is connected to the one that I just mentioned, but we can see, for example, in Spain, farmers association and irrigation cooperatives work closely with authorities to push non-conventional water adoption. In Egypt, the Bedouin cooperatives serve as a bridge between communities and the government. So the way that the network is built in order to promote and which are the actors that are involved in those networks, right? Italy has regional networks of agricultural stakeholders advocating for better water infrastructures. And another two common opportunities that we saw is the economic and financial incentives. Spain, Tunisia, and Egypt have benefits from international funding that support non-conventional water projects. Also, regional programs and subsidies help farmers cover desalinated water costs in Spain. And in Italy and Tunisia, we can identify mechanisms to co-finance agricultural water infrastructure. So that could be something to explore, right? And the technological and infrastructure readiness. Spain has a well-developed desalination sector with integrated policies. Italy has experience with small reservoirs management, which could be expanded. And Tunisia and Egypt have existing structures for water harvesting and aquifer recharge that could be scaled up. So how to leverage these opportunities? And with this, I will end. Sorry, yes, I'm getting into a 30 minutes. Well, I will mention some of the ideas. This is part of a preliminary document that I'm finishing, but the idea is to enhance cross-border collaboration, encourage regional cooperation agreements for transboundary aquifer management, strengthen knowledge exchange networks between Mediterranean countries, taking advantage of Spain and Italy's advances in non-conventional water research, for example. Also, expand financial support and investment strategies, develop target funding programs for small-scale non-conventional water infrastructure in agriculture, focusing on Tunisia, Algeria, and Egypt. Promote public and private partnerships to scale up desalination and aquifer recharge efforts, and strengthen local capacity and training programs. How? Expanding technical training for farmers and local actors on the efficient use and maintenance of non-conventional water technologies, for example, or facilitate community-led water management models, ensuring that local users are engaged in decision-making. So that's something that we also identify as a barrier in some countries, in terms that if we don't get the participation of the citizens, of the communities, then it's really difficult to get a local demand for this kind of model. Also, well, yes, improve regulatory frameworks and governance, so working in the policy and the governance frame, simplify administrative processes for non-conventional water infrastructure in order to avoid bureaucracies, establish clear legal incentives for private sector involvement in non-conventional water implementation. Also, integrate non-conventional water into climate resilience strategies. So align non-conventional water policies with national climate adaptation plans or regional climate adaptation plans. Promote blended water management approaches, integrating desalination, groundwater recharge, and treated wastewater reuse. So this is some of the ideas that we have in terms to leverage the opportunities, the common opportunities that we identify. So this is just a quick view for the presentation. Thank you very much, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Melina, for the interesting presentation. And so I remind all the participants that you can both either ask questions writing in the chat or raise your hand and open the microphone to ask a question. Has anyone already a question? Otherwise, I have one. Okay, maybe I can start to break the ice, as we say in Italy. Which was the impact of the stakeholders in the preparation of the Mediterranean Mediterranean scale plan? And how do you think the stakeholders can help in the implementation of the Mediterranean plan?
Thank you, Eleonora. Well, I answer and then it's a small question. Yeah, the idea is now in the workshops that they're planned, the fourth workshop that every Living Lab is planning to do in the end of March or beginning of April. The idea is to have a feedback of stakeholders of some policy briefs that compile different ideas that I just shared with you in terms of promoting non-conventional water. But the idea is to make it collectively, like with them as key stakeholders and key actors to define what are the needs of every local situation. No, it's not something that the idea is not to build a strategy from the academic field and not sharing with the local actors, but sharing with them and revise all the things that they mention or that they think that won't be possible or that perhaps would be better if we take into account different things. So the idea is to make a co-production with them, but we are in the process of that. And the workshops that are taking place now is the opportunity to make that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melina. And so there are other questions. Maybe we can wait just 1 minute, then we move on with the, let's say, the very last part of this masterclass. Okay, so right now there are no other questions. I think that we can move on. And thank you again, Melina, for your presentation. I think there will be also ways to keep in contact also with the participants if they want to have further interaction about the content of your presentation if needed. So now I will leave the floor to Enrico again, who is going to present an idea, let's say, that we had a few time ago.
Yes, thank you. It's actually an idea that we came up with while preparing for this masterclass. It's an idea to continue the discussions that we have and we currently have on non-conventional water. I'm gonna just present the one slide. And this might be of interest to the projects involved in this masterclass, but also to all the participants of the masterclass. So this is actually an idea that anyone can join if you're interested. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, okay. So the idea is that I think maybe many of you are hydrologists, so maybe you are aware of the initiative by the International Association of Hydrological Science. The initiative is called Helping Teams and Working Groups. It's a decade of action by the International Association of Hydrological Science. And the Helping stands for Hydrology Engaging Local People in One Global World. And it's a bottom-up process empowered by local hydrologists and scientists using open science and local data and methods when solving local water problems. Perhaps some of you are already in some working groups within this initiative. The working groups are divided in 3 themes. The first one is the helping with the global and local interaction. The second one is the helping with holistic solutions for water security. And the theme 3 is helping with cross-cutting goals. And we had a look of all the working groups that have been proposed so far since 2023. And actually we noticed that there is no working group specifically for the use of non-conventional water resources for water security. And so, well, the idea is actually rather simple, is to propose a new working group within theme 2, the working group focusing on non-conventional water for water security. And these working groups are, the initiatives of the working group are decided by the group itself once it is formed and proposed, but it's a way of continuing the discussions on non-conventional water resources among researchers, scientists, and so on. You can then have a look later on when we share the presentations on some more information on the helping initiative. But yeah, the idea is to create a new working group on this. So then to test your interest, but first of all, you can comment, you can raise your hand and make any comments, but also we prepared a very short poll to gather their interest in proposing and participating to a working group. So in the chat right now, you find a link to a Mentimeter question. Let me check as well that I can see it. Yeah. So you can go into the chat and you can click on the link. It's a Mentimeter pool just to gather their interest. And now I'm gonna show live the results. And we are aware of the fact that it's still possible to propose new working groups. So we have the chance to propose new working groups to the International Association of Hydraulical Science. And I don't know if anyone has any questions. I think I saw a hand raised. Or not, maybe not.
Yeah, there was, but I think it disappeared. So if who wants to talk, please open your microphone. Otherwise, we skip it.
We will circulate anyway the more informations on this idea, on this opportunity. And I will let a few more seconds for you to answer the poll. And then I would ask everyone to open their video so that we can take a picture, please, of all the participants. Before we go on to some concluding remarks by Professor Elena Bresci. Okay. Eleonora, you're gonna take the screenshot. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Just let's wait one moment so that if someone else wants to open the video, because still we have a lot of letters, but a few cameras open. Yeah. So let's wait just one moment, and then we'll assume that it's fine as it is. Okay, I will take the picture.
Okay, thank you.
Done. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And now I leave the floor to Professor Elena Bresci for concluding remarks.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, Enrico. And I open and I close the masterclass saying that it has been really a success to have more than 30 person up to the end. after 3 hours masterclass. So this really remarks the interest, the high interest that has been shown by the participants to the subject, and in particular to the interventions that has been proposed. As a conclusion, actually, it is for me important to remark the importance of the networking of people that are working on non-conventional water use. That's why we also propose to going on with the discussion with the working group, because now we are all involved in project, but as we all know, once the project is finishing, we have a new project on taking under consideration. So making the efforts that has been made by all the 3 projects in networking is, I think, something that should be go on in the next years. And this is also important for learning from each others, because the experience that has been made in one project can be important for the others, and also for presenting new projects. So networking are fundamental for future collaboration. And we understood that the technology are there, so testing has been made, but we still have to work on how we can spread the use of non-conventional water in terms of stakeholders' involvement, and also the importances of policy at each, I would say, level. So I really thank you very much again. The registration, it will be available. So if you know that someone could not attend, there will be still the possibility of following the masterclass, and we are all available for any questions or doubts or anything you would like to pose to us. So thanks again, and I wish you all a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.